What a beautiful day we've had. There's a few things that I wanted to share with you. Bo, I really appreciated your story this morning. That's one of my favorites. If you missed it, Bo told about Gideon, who he just had a little trouble with believing that the Lord was there. And so he asked that a piece of fleece or a little cloth would be filled with water, and all the ground around it would be dry. And it was so. And then he didn't believe, and so he said, well, will you make the fleece dry and all the ground wet? So he did. This is a good story, Bo. Appreciate it. You know, things like that in our life that stands for symbols, that causes us to remember the goodness of God and the love of His Son, who was able to come and show us by example by going into the water and being blessed with the ordinances of the church and gave them to us. One of the things that I've observed in my own life is I'm kind of a physical guy. I like to see things, and I can read directions how to put things together, but a picture sure does a lot of things for me. And I think the picture that we have seen this morning of Ryan being baptized, laid in the water, is a physical representation of giving up, that you might follow the Master. One of the stories I was going to share this morning, I'm not going to read it all. It's in 4th chapter of Joshua. And it's about Joshua leading the Israelites across the River Jordan. And where he crossed the river, and near his archaeological evidence is that it was real close to the place in the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized himself. And I think the last time I shared with you some of the thing, like I said, I believe in the physical arrangement of even the earth. And it just so happened where they crossed the river was about 1,277 feet below sea level, just above the Dead Sea. And there's a lot of things that happened in that area. And when they crossed the Jordan River, Joshua took 12 stones. He had a representation of each tribe, the 12 tribes of Israel, and they came and they picked up 12 stones out of the bottom of that river, and they took it to Gilgal. Now, Gilgal, I found through study that Gilgal was not really a town. At least they don't think it was a town, because Gilgal is mentioned several times. But Gilgal is a spiritual place to worship and so on. And so it could have happened in several places. In fact, the archaeological has found 12 or have found stones that are laid in a circle. And there must have been a reason for that, and they have pictures of where they have laid the stones. Well, Joshua told the Israelites, or the representation of the 12 tribes, to take 12 stones to go to Gilgal and place them. And then also put 12 stones in the bottom of the Jordan River. Well, the Jordan River, when they crossed the Jordan River, it was open like the Red Sea. When the Ark of the Covenant came, and the priests came and the water parted, they said it was even flooded edges and so on. But they came and they, where they put their feet in the bottom of the Jordan River, that's where they got the stones. Well, the reason for the stones was it was to remember all your children. When you see those stones, you're going to remember that the Lord stopped the water for you to cross. Because that was a big deal. That was a big deal. All the time they were coming across to the Jordan River, coming to the Holy Land, they were fed by manna. Now, there was a lot of manna. Had to have been a lot of manna. And once they crossed the Jordan River into the Holy Land, then they partook of all of the things in the valley, the vegetables and the fruit from the trees and so on. And I don't know what all that was, but let me tell you how important it was. Joshua told the people and the priest who was carrying the Ark of the Covenant, he said, I want you to stay back. I want all you people stay back, because I want you to stay back 2,000 cubits. Well, I looked it up. Well, how big was a cubit? Well, the longest of the short section of cubits is 18 inches. And the reason they measure that from the elbow to the tip of the fingers. So, being an old carpenter, I got my wood rule out and went over to my fireplace, the stone wall, and rammed my elbow up against it and measured, and it was exactly 18 inches to the end of my fingers. Now, Jason may be longer than that. Parker's may be shorter than that. I think Parker's going to be longer than that, though, later. 18 inches. 2,018 inches. That's 3,000 feet. That's a little over a half a mile. 9/16 of a mile, and there's, Larry could tell me with math, he could tell me. And that's over a half mile. Well, how would they know, looking down to the Ark of the Covenant, could they see a half a mile? Well, there's more information. A half a mile is quite a ways. I remember one time Brian and I think Brian was with me at the same time on a skid loader or whatever. I was blading snow at the Chief Stadium. And I was at the very east end of the Chief Stadium running a rotor grader, blading it off for the Chiefs game. And I made a turn clear up at the east end, and I'm sure there's probably at least a quarter of a mile up there to the east end of that parking lot. If you've walked it, which some of us have, it's a long ways. I had the door open. It was a sunny winter day. Had the door open on the blade, and I heard this big roar. Well, what it was 80,000 people cheering the Chiefs on for their made a good play. Now, what does that have to do with the Jordan River? Well, there were 600,000 warriors with the tribe of Israel. That wasn't counting the wives, the children, and so on. Archaeologists say that there was somewhere over 2 million people that crossed the Jordan River. So you can imagine how Joshua felt about the Ark of the Covenant, how holy it was that he would bring it up to a point with so much, a little bit of reverence anyway, to cross that river because the Lord had opened the water and provided a place for them to cross into the Holy Land. Well, I can imagine 2 million people. Now, I heard 80,000 people at the Chief Stadium in a quarter of a mile, and it was pretty clear. I could hear them pretty well. So you can imagine the effect. And being 2 million people fed by manna, and then crossing over to the Jordan River. Now, I don't know if all my information is exactly right, but that's what I was told by historians. Those stones represented something that remind the children that God was with them when they crossed the Jordan River. And that place was very important to them. And Gilgal must have been a very important place for them to place those stones, and I assume they placed them in a circle like what they have found. I brought, last time I was in charge of prayer service, I found that there was a baptism, and just before. So we didn't have a prayer service, we had a baptism. And Riley Nicole Leone was baptized. And I shared, where is she? Is she here? I don't see her. She was in Sunday school class earlier. And many of you were here, and I told them about a friend of mine, one of my favorite communicators, my instructor at Graceland College, presented me with a walking stick. And I thought, well, I would bring it as an illustration. There's something special about that stick. The stick, on all the sticks that he carved, has walk straight. Winston Inslee, who is my favorite communicator, gave me this stick. It's a piece of cedar. It has a little cabin in the mountains. It kind of represents life, what life's about. Bottom here, right above his name, walk straight. That night that Riley was baptized, I shared a couple scriptures about baptism and about the straight and narrow. I'm kind of a physical guy, so I've seen Brother Glenn use some of his woodwork as a visual aid. I remember one specific visual aid that Larry Schofield used. He was right here and had a bucket of water, and he wanted the kids to know what the effects of a rock in a bucket of water was, and he dropped it. Everybody sat there wondering, is he going to drop it? Is he going to drop it? And he did. And he splattered a little bit of water, and he assured the deacons that it was not going to ruin the carpet. But his story meant something to me. He was telling us about the effects of life. I have another example. Some of you said, well, what in the world is that? Well, it's a miniature bale of cotton that Eloise's cousin gave me. And there's enough cotton in this little bale to make a man's flannel shirt. It's a representation of the full bale. A full bale weighs 480 pounds. It's 20 inches, what they consider a long cubit. It's about 20 inches. by 30 inches by 54 inches. And what will that do? What does that have to do with Jesus? Well, out of that bale of cotton, I have a whole list of things that you could use it for. For you young teenagers, a bale of cotton will make 215 pair of $100 designer jeans, whatever that means to you. That can, for you older women, it will make 3,085 diapers. Very few people use diapers anymore. But it'll also make something that you may not have known, and I didn't know. It will make 313,600 $100 bills. I thought they were paper bills. A dollar bill or $100 bill is 75% cotton, 25% linen. What does that have to do with Jesus? It's the potential. It's the potential of a bale of cotton, and life is full of potentiality of each one of us. Now, Eloise's cousin, H. Schulke, didn't know that he was going to be in the cotton business. He's responsible for protecting 1 million bales of cotton with fire protection. Well, what does that have to do with him? He didn't start out being a cotton man. He started out being a high school math teacher and a coach. But somehow through life, he found his way to being in the cotton business. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We have to be the best we can. I can remember Earl King running a crane at Armco Steel. And his time when he wasn't picking up a flat of steel and putting it on a truck, he'd run it down as far as he could go, as fast as he could, raising the cable up as fast as he could, and letting it down just at the right time to be efficient to pick up another piece of steel. That was practice. He wouldn't have been such a great crane operator had he not taken it to his heart. What Andrea sang about the heart and how we feel about our life and having the potential to being what we can be. But what we need to do is ask the Lord. Ask the Lord, where do I go next? And Brother Ryan asked, what am I going to do next? There's been a lot of sadness in this congregation about concerns about their grandchildren, custody, how they were going to get along. But the blessing is we have experiences of where he has shown himself. And all we have to do is ask. The unknown is scary. Brother Aaron reminded us of the baptism and a relationship with Jesus and being committed to our companions. Gary and Susie next week are going to renew their vows. can't believe Susie's going to do it with Gary. 50 years. They're enjoying their life together. And it's just not a life. It's a life of service. Last week, Gary gave up some precious time. He drove up to Michigan to help his brother-in-law plant 60 acres of beans. He wouldn't have had to, but he did because he loved him. He gave part of his life for someone else. All we have to do is ask. We're going to sing a song about the heart and about asking. My job today was to come and tell you God loves you. And He hears you. And He wants to know what your heart's desire is. All through the scriptures it promises that I will be there. In one place it says, in the very moment you ask, He will answer.